Hi, welcome to the Scottish Summit 2021. You're here for project-based learning with low-code tools. That's a mouthful, and what does it all mean? Well, that's what I'll be showing you in today's session. Before we get started, I'd like to give a huge shout-out to some of our sponsors. This includes ScriptRunner, the #1 for PowerShell management, DQ Global, driving data quality, Proximal 3, Microsoft Consulting Specialists, Red Spire, Agilicis, and Hitachi Solutions. Without their support, we wouldn't be able to put on this massive event organized by the community. So thank you to all of our sponsors. Before I get into what all of this means, I'd like to share about myself, as it's going to be apparent what motivates me to write a session like this. So many of you may know me as Mr. Dang. That's because in the past I had been an elementary school teacher teaching 3rd and 4th graders. Everything from math, reading, science, social studies, and so on. Now, I had discovered something in that journey, Power Apps, Power Automate, and more. Having built many apps for my classroom, I decided I need more time to create all of the things that I want for my classroom so I could run more efficiently, so my students could have the experience that I've always wanted them to have. And with that, I decided to take a sabbatical. One thing led to another, and Microsoft ended up bringing me here to hire me. And here I am with you, sharing with you about a topic that I'm so passionate about, that you can apply whether you are a teacher, you're an administrator, a parent, or you're a student who's interested in improving your learning outcomes. So without further ado, let's get into what project-based learning is. And the reason why I want to spend time on this part is without laying the groundwork, right? I could show you all this technology, all this wonderful technology. But what's the point if you don't have the foundation, the principles of why it's important to teach in a certain kind of way? So I want to make the case for you, if you're not familiar with project-based learning, to suggest it to those that you know, or to adopt it for yourself at home. Let's take a look. I believe there are 4 important things that make project-based learning valuable. Now, growing up, you probably had a lot of direct instruction. This is where the teacher disseminates the information and you take it in, right? You absorb it. You take notes, you make it your own. Project-based learning is very student-centered, where the students do the exploration, the discovery, through projects. They create something, and they can only create that project if they have that knowledge. And in creating it and showing that knowledge, it's something that you could assess. You could assess how well they grasped something based on their project. It shows more than just a multiple choice test, which may be inaccurate when guessing is involved, right? But a project, you can't fake that. you just can't. So, #1, you need to have, for project-based learning to work, you need to have creative space. Space for taking risks, where your students will feel they can take chances, make mistakes, and get messy, right? Just like Ms. Frizzle said. Now, without that, they really can't move on with a project. You can assign whatever project that you want, but if they don't feel they can take a risk, they're not going to go very far. Project-based learning is valuable because you're working with worthwhile problems that are true to life. They're real. And because of that, real problems are authentic, right? You can relate to it. It's not somebody going to a shopping mall and picking up 20 bags of toilet paper rolls with 4 toilet paper rolls in each. That's not a practical problem, and it's not a real problem. So project-based learning practices those kinds of skills with better meaning. 3, choice. When you do project-based learning, you may offer students or your child multiple ways of getting to the end of it, of showing their mastery of a certain concept from a variety of choices. And this is where the technology that I show you today comes in. It's just one more way that they can use, one more way that you can offer for them to show their mastery. It's more motivating when they feel that they can choose something themselves rather than being told, here, this is the way that you're going to be showing your mastery. And finally, with all those in place, one more important thing that's needed and that comes out of project-based learning is ownership. It's the idea that students feel they own their learning. They own their learning outcomes, that the actions that they do in this project are theirs, that the learning that comes out is theirs. And without that, it's hard for them to become lifelong learners. Now, with those tenets in mind, I want to share about the technology that I'm talking about today. I mentioned earlier, all the technology can exist in the world, but there's no point if it doesn't have a purpose, right? So what I show you today, I want it to serve as just one more tool that you have in your belt to show mastery. A low-code platform, such as the Power Platform, involves things like Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, tools that are easier to use to solve problems than traditional tools, right? Code, when you think of code, it may involve lines of text that are hard to understand. They're literally code. They're in a different kind of language. Low code seeks to make that more familiar, using knowledge that you may already have, borrowing that knowledge, transferring it over, so that you have less to learn. You have something more familiar to you that you can actually grasp. So we'll be getting into 3 of the many parts of the platform. Now, there's more that I could show today, but I've chosen these 3 and decided to go into depth with them for your sake. As I go into these, a concept that I'm going to be sharing along the way is depth of knowledge. What level of thinking, of critical thinking, metacognition, are students doing in these projects? These projects that I'll show you today operate at multiple levels of depth of knowledge, from 1 to 4, from recall to extended thinking. Now, if you grew up with a lot of direct instruction, a lot of multiple choice tests, it's a lot of recall. And if you did more projects, they may involve levels 2 through 4 more. Now, the idea behind depth of knowledge is not that you try to aim for depth of knowledge for over and over and over and just only do direct DOK4. That's not the point of it. You want to have a way for students to exercise all those levels, right? They're all important, including recall. All of them are needed. If you only do DOK4, that's a lot of mental exhaustion, that cognitive exhaustion that you may impose upon students. And so the balance that I'm going to be showing you today is something that's worth your time. And before I get into it, I want to show you a little bit of what I've made, a tool that you can use for managing all these projects, and then get into the projects themselves. All of this that I'm showing you today comes about because I believe anybody can be a maker. I believe you watching this can be a maker, and I believe your students or your child can be a maker, can be somebody who creates apps, somebody who creates bots, somebody who automates the processes around them. If you're an admin or an IT person, you also have a place here. I may not be speaking directly to your scenarios, and I may not be speaking directly to scenarios that a teacher may make, because today I'm speaking to projects that students make. But you can find the overlap in the work that you do by tweaking things just a little bit for your context. So let's get into what I've made and how you can use this platform. What are the limits that you can go? Hint, there are no limits. Here's an app that I've made for practicing multiplication in a more visual kind of way. It doesn't just let students slide the bars and create the numbers, but it lets them choose and discover, and this is the important part, discover why base 10 is helpful, right? Seeing that 10 times 10 as part of 12 times 13 makes it easy to see why the algorithms that we use work. And so making it visual is the first step, but anytime that I make apps, I always want it to do one more thing. In this case, it's giving feedback for each step of the way. And another part is that students are recording their thinking. That's so important. Metacognition is students thinking about what they're doing. In this case, they're inking, and they could even record their voice and say, why does this work? Or what are you doing as you're doing it? And why? With that in mind, the apps that I show you today are a very first level basic step. It's up to you and your students to take it wherever they want to go. Let's get into the first app that I'd like to show you. This is one that you can use overall, you as the teacher or the parent. This is a portal for voting on suggesting ideas. Now, project-based learning involves problems. There are problems all around us. And I mentioned earlier, real-world problems, authentic problems, problems that we can relate to. We need a place to collect those problems, and those become our projects, right? Collecting those problems, upvoting them, giving a thumbs up and saying, hey, this is a problem that I think we should prioritize. This solution that I'm showing you next is a way to find those problems, identify those problems, and propose solutions. You can use this for organizing groups of small groups that students can break out into to create tools for solving those problems. So without further ado, let's hop over to Microsoft Teams, where we'll be using Dataverse for Teams to create this app. Here I'm inside Microsoft Teams, where we'll be spinning up that very first app for organizing problems, campaigns, whatever you would like to call it. I can select Apps and search for Power Apps. Select Power Apps, click Add. This will install the environment for Power Apps. We'll be creating a new app called Employee Ideas. Now, of course, our students, our kids are not our employees, though this exact scenario for ideas or a forum, a place where people submit suggestions to improve, will work the exact same way as we're expecting. So I'll select Employee Ideas, click Add to a Team, then search for a team where I want this app to live. I'll select this team, click Setup tab. It will prompt me to save this tab and post it to the channel if I want to do so. I'll click Save. Then it will take some time to create all of the dependencies that we need for this app to work. Once the app is finished being made, you'll see some different prompts. You can accept our permissions and then dismiss any other dialogues. This is what the app looks like. It appears as a tab at the top of a team. Now, it's called Employee Ideas. Our students and our children are not employees, so let's go ahead and rename it. I can select the tab, click Rename, we'll call it Ideas, and save. The app will reload. And now let me walk you through some of the different aspects of this app, because I think it's a really nice tool for you to organize your problem-based learning, your project-based learning. So at the bottom, you'll see the different campaigns. Think of these as problems. What problem do you want to solve? Let's go ahead and open up one of these, Cafe Food. So the problem here is wanting to improve food quality. Below that, you'll see some different suggestions or ideas that somebody has added. So in this sample, one person has added a suggested idea of having prepackaged food. And there is a button on the right-hand side for somebody to thumb up. This is useful for finding out how many small groups you want for your project-based learning, right? If you have a lot of thumbs for one particular solution, you may want to devote 2 or 3 small groups for that solution, while others who are interested can try a different solution to solve the same problem. I highly encourage the use of this app because it's out of the box. You don't have to make it. The only skill involved here is just a few clicks to rename so that it's appropriate for your scenario, for your use case. Now, what I'd like to show next is an app for cataloging knowledge, for keeping track of what you know. This is a nice app that can be used at all different age groups. It can be used for all different kinds of topics as well. Let's get into what that looks like. It's called the Knowledge Bank. It includes a way of saving content, categorizing that content, and then reviewing it for later. Let me walk through the different levels of depth of knowledge that you can expect to see if you pursue this. So for instance, let's use this as an example. We'll take vocabulary words for a new language that you're learning. I was learning Latin in high school, so for me, I might want to record all of the different words that I've picked up for Latin. Now, I have a way of saving words. At DOK1, students save the words that they're learning once the app is finished. DOK2 is actually making the app, making the table where all of these words will be saved. Depth of knowledge level 3 is where they can extend the app so that it is available in different contexts. So they may have made it, they may have made an app for saving words, but they can add new features to that app. Maybe they want to create a way to review those words inside the app. And then depth of knowledge 4. This is an extension. I won't be showing it today, but using that same table of words that they've saved, use them in a new context. Maybe they may want to create a game with those words. That gives them so much ownership of their learning. Let's take a look at how can they build this project. Now that we've built one app, we can access Power Apps so that we could build even more apps. Selecting apps from the left navigation, I'll search for Power Apps, select Power Apps, then click Open. This is now where I'm going to click Create an App instead of selecting one of the out-of-the-box templates. It'll ask me to select a team where I want this app to be made. I'll go ahead and choose one that I have permissions to, and then click Create. This will prepare a blank app for me to customize. This lets me name the app, create a table for the app, and then this app will let me create records, delete records, update, and read records. So let's start by giving this app a name. We'll call this our word bank, and then click Save. Next, once it's done saving, I want to give this app a table to save my words. Everything inside apps revolves around tables. How do you want to structure how you save the words? So I'll create a table. I'll call this vocabulary, word, singular. Then I'll click create. Once the table is created, we'll land on a page where we can add rows and columns to the table. It starts with a column called name by default. We want it to be more descriptive, so we'll go ahead and click it and choose edit column. We'll call this word and save. Now, back in high school, I studied Latin. So for this example, I'll pretend as if I were creating an app to practice Latin or to catalog words from Latin. So let's start with putting in some fake data. So I might have a word like agricola. Agricolae. It's the word for farmer. I have a word like an adjective. Magnus, magna, magnum. And I might have the verb to be. Sum, esse, fui, futurus, What I'll do next, now that I have some fake data, is I'll go ahead and add some new columns. I can do that by clicking the plus icon at the top. I'll call this the part of speech. Now, every single language is different. I could use a choice column. Now, English has 7 parts of speech. Other languages divide them differently. For our purposes, I'll just keep this simple to noun, verb, and adjective. The nice thing about a choice column, which is different from a text column, is I don't have to retype noun, verb, object over and over like you would in a traditional table. The choice column validates these options. So agricola, agricolae, the word for farmer, is a noun. Magnus, the word for large, is an adjective. Sum esse fui is a verb. It's the verb to be. I may want to have the English translation for it. So I can create a column that's text for translation. And I'll put in the translation for each of these. But right now, Dataverse for Teams has support for text, email, URL, phone, auto number, date, decimal, lookup, choice, yes and no. So I may want to add a yes-no column for irregular. A column called is it irregular. Agricola, agricolae is not irregular, so I can flip this to false. Same with Magnus, it's not irregular, but sum esse fui is, so I'll flip that to yes. Now I have some basic columns that I can get started with, and I'll show you just a quick extension of it after I move on. I'll click close. Now everything is auto-saved, and I could confirm at the top. Now what the app is going to do is it's added all of those columns that we just added to the form that you see in the center of the screen, and on the left-hand side of the screen, it's put in those words as well as its translation automatically for us. Now suppose we want to make things interesting. I could even translate or add a picture. I could add those kinds of connections. Let's go ahead and start with adding an image control. So I'll go ahead and save the app. Any kind of columns that I want to manually add, I could also do that by going to the Build tab, selecting my table, and then once I'm inside my table, I could add a new column over on the right-hand side. I'll call it image or picture. I'll change its data type to image, and I'll click Done. The bottom right-hand corner, I'll click Save. Now what I'll do is I'll return to the app by going to that Build tab. selecting my word bank app, reopening it. I may need to override the app. Now once it's loaded, what I'll go ahead and do is inside that form where I update a word, I will go to its fields. Right now we just added that special image column. I'll click Add Field, and then go to that picture column and click Add. Now if I were to play this app, I can click Preview at the top. I can add a new record. And I could type in a different word that I want to save. And then you'll see for that picture column, it has a tap or click Add a Picture. This lets me upload a picture to describe the word that I'm learning. Everything that I've shown you right now is primarily DOK1 for recall. You're recalling these words that you're practicing for the week. And a little bit of DOK2 if you start to add interesting columns to categorize and classify the words if they are not already provided to you. Once you have all of these words inside that table, that's where the magic is. You can add new experiences to this existing app. You could even create a game based on the words that you've saved, and that's where you'll hit DOKs 3 and 4. So this is a really good first app that you could use at all age levels, all topics. It's the one that you could pull out of your utility belt anytime that you want a good project for your learning that's extendable. Next, we are going to take a look at some other kinds of scenarios with apps before we move on to another topic. I'd like to show you a glimpse of some projects that we've created for the hour of low code. Take a moment out of your school day or out of your after-school activities to learn how to create even more apps. One of these scenarios includes creating your own library. So you can catalog all of the books that you have at home, creating a word bank, just like I've shown here, except this one adds translation. It makes things a lot more interesting. Take your foreign language class to the next level. And then an app that is a musical instrument, a kalimba or a thumb piano. What I like about it is your device is no longer just a device for making calls. Your mobile device, your laptop, it can become a musical instrument of any kind. You can place the buttons anywhere that you want and make some custom sounds even. So far, I've shown you how to create apps for saving all of these words that you want to learn. Really, it could save any kind of content, any kind of learning content, and you could extend it so far. And I've shown you how you could create an app for managing the different project-based learning activities that you're doing, right? What are the different problems and solutions that are being suggested? Next, I'd like to show you a different kind of project that you'll love for social studies as well as literature. Imagine bringing to life your very favorite characters or figures from history. You can do that by training a chat bot. So Power Virtual Agents is the next part of this session that I'm showing you. If you were to train this bot to become a character, at the very first level of depth of knowledge, they would be able to respond with facts about a character. So you can have that chatbot respond when you say hello, say their own name, right? It's a basic fact about them. You can have them share who they are, what they did. That's very on-the-surface content. That's depth of knowledge 1. Depth of knowledge 2 is retelling parts of a story from another character's point of view. So you might choose to create a bot from somebody who's not the protagonist, maybe the antagonist. That would be interesting, right? Depth of knowledge level 3, adding voice, making those characters or historical figures come alive with voice and dialect. And depth of knowledge level 4 is having them respond to hypothetical situations in real life. How would they act today with modern technology? So there's so many different ways that you can take this even further. For this session, I'll show you how to create your very first bot and take a look at some of the different topics and how to train a bot at a very basic level, and you can take it even further than that. Earlier I showed you how to add Power Apps to Microsoft Teams. Adding Power Virtual Agents is going to be very similar steps. I'll click Apps at the bottom. I'll search for Power Virtual. I'll select it and I'll click Open. This will pull up a home screen, and I'll click Start Now or simply go to the Chatbots tab. I'll train a new chatbot. Now I'm going to create this one based on Johnny Tremain, one of my favorite books back in 5th grade. I'll select a team where I want this bot to reside, and then I'll click Continue. It'll take a moment. I'll give my bot a name, Tremain Bot. Now the name cannot be changed later, so be very selective. Then I'll click Create. It'll take a moment to provision that bot, just setting things up. Our bot is ready. The first thing I'll do is go to its topics. What is it able to say to me? So I'll click Go to Topics. It comes with some pre-provisioned conversations, some basic things like hello and the end of a conversation and thank you. Let's start by going into the greeting and see how this all works. There are many different ways of greeting this bot. You can say good afternoon, good morning, 52 different ways of asking this question. And the more ways that you program this to understand what is being asked of it or told to it, the more it's going to respond correctly. So if somebody were to greet this bot, I'm going to go to the author and canvas to see what happens. It will say these messages. Hi, I'm a virtual agent, and so on. Over on the left side of the screen, I could test this out. I might say, good morning. Notice I'm not capitalizing things. I'm being very sloppy on purpose because when I type that in, because I've trained it in so many different ways to acknowledge this question or this statement, it is able to identify what I've said and then respond in the way that it has been trained. Now, we want our Tremain bot, our Johnny, to be more like Johnny, to have voice. So I can edit this in real time. So based on those trigger phrases, instead of saying I'm a virtual agent, let me go ahead and revise this. Hi, I'm Johnny Tremain. And instead of saying hi, I could even go further and say a greeting that would be from the book, right? Some way that he typically responds. So I might say something that somebody else has said to Johnny Tremain. Look sharp. I'm Johnny Tremain, silversmith, at your service. I could keep the other messages. I'll show you that you can even delete one of these. And I'll keep that last one. How can I help you today? When I'm ready with my changes, I'll click Save. It'll take a moment to save the dialogue. It'll reset the conversation. Now that I've shown you how to train this bot, what we'll do next is start a new topic from scratch. And I can do that by clicking the back button at the top left. Then, at the top, I'll click New Topic. Let's get to know Johnny's early life. We could ask this question as a statement instead and say, tell me about your early life or early childhood period. I might ask it as, what happened to your hand? Now, as we know from Johnny Tremaine, he had an accident that caused him to have accident while he was silversmithing that caused him to have a crippled hand. Now, this would not be the most polite conversation to have with Johnny as a second question in the conversation, but we're doing this as a demo. This is where we can get really into voice. So maybe we're talking about Johnny and Johnny's responding at his early life. Maybe we're creating this bot with Johnny at the end of the story. That makes things interesting too. So let's suppose this is Johnny at the beginning of the story. He might hide his hand. So we can do something like hides hand and make that italicized to show that's what he might say, right? Or might do. Maybe we're making this bot as Johnny at the end of the story. So he might say, why, I was a mighty fine silversmith. And then, though that had all changed one day when Dusty had silly Dusty had caused me to topple some hot silver on my hand. And then if we're talking about a Johnny at the end of the story, he might say, well, at least that's what I would have said, though now looking back, I feel I wrought this on myself, right? And I could save that, test it out. I might respond with, I might ask a question like, oh no, what happened to your hand? Send that. And based on the way that I've trained this, it pulls up that question, even though I didn't ask it exactly the way that I typed it. So this is a great way of getting to know historical figures, characters from a book in literature, in an interesting way. And these chatbots can live on beyond the year, right? You could have a full library of these characters. And then you could even have multiple students train that same character in a joint project. So project-based learning doesn't have to be done alone. And you'll really reach those high depth of knowledge levels by this kind of project. I'd like to end with planting a seed about where you can, I'd like to end with planting a seed on where you can take your problem-solving skills after doing a lot of project-based learning. You get into this habit of wanting to solve problems for others. I'm very proud of our community and the Power Platform community for creating these hackathons where people from all over come together and solve problems for nonprofits all around the world. They're very passionate about taking their skills of technology and helping other groups achieve their goals. And so what I'll show you next is how you could run your very own hackathon for solving problems. And in this case, not every problem that you come across is going to be a problem that is solved by creating an app. Sometimes you could even solve a problem without needing to have any kind of interface, any kind of touch. We could do that with automation. We could solve a problem as basic as taking a set of calendar dates and of assignments and then putting it into our calendar if it doesn't already exist. So let's take a look at what Power Automate is and how you can solve problems with automation. I'm back inside Microsoft Teams. Can you guess how I'm going to add Power Automate to Teams? That's right, it's the same way. I go to Apps, search for Power Automate, select it, then click Add. And just like the others, it'll appear in the left navigation. Now, for my scenario, let's say I'm running a potluck, a classroom party, and I want to remind somebody to make sure that when they fill out the form to say they're going to be bringing chips or drinks, that they are reminded a day ahead of time, or even the beginning of the week. So let's create a new flow. I could start from an existing one, or I could create one from blank. So I'll start by prepping one from blank. Now let's go ahead and go to Microsoft Forms, where we'll create a form for selecting a potluck item. Here I'm at forms.microsoft.com. I'll go ahead and click New Form at the top. For this new form, I'll call it Potluck Signup. I'll click Add New Question. A couple things I want to know about the signup. I want the first, last, and email address of the person. Then I'll click Add Selected. Those are some suggested questions. Now for another question, I want text. Right? I want to keep it open-ended as to what people want to bring. What will you bring? And then it's auto-saved, so I can go ahead and go back to my flow and create my reminder. Now I'm back inside Power Automate, and this is where I'm going to be creating that delayed notification for potluck signups. I'll search for Forms, and then I'll select that trigger. When a new response is submitted to that form, all of these actions that I define will happen. I select my potluck sign-up form. I'll search for Forms again. Now, this flow is able to process multiple forms at once, so I need to get the response details of each submission. I select that form again, and then for response ID, using that dynamic content selector, I take the respective response. It's going to get the details of that form that was submitted. For the next step, I want to delay until, so I search for delay. Now I want to put in a time that is 1 day before my event. So I might put in 2021, February 27th. And then the time is placed in between the letters T and Z. I'm going to set it to 00 and save. Now let's add one more step, which is the actual notification. I'll do this as an email. So I'll add Office 365, send an email. In the To field, I will add dynamic content with the response details of the email address. In the subject, reminder, don't forget potluck sign up. And then in the body, I'll say, hi. Here I can put in the name of the person based on the response details from the dynamic content. So it'll address them the way that they typed in their name. Don't forget to bring space, and then I put in the answer to the question of what will they bring to our potluck tomorrow, period. Thank you. I can click Save. So if I were to submit this, I will receive an email with this reminder at this given date. Of course, I have to wait for that to happen. So that is how you can set up real-world automation for real-world problems inside of Power Automate. And I hope that from these projects that I've shared today, you try and use these as options, as choices, as part of your project-based learning activities. Well, that concludes this flow, And if you're interested in seeing more examples of automation, we have even created a set of flows for educators like you. You can go to the Power Users Community Forum for the Power Automate community, and we have a cookbook with all of these flows made just for you. You could also go to aka.ms/hour of low code for a hackathon guide, as well as the apps that I had shown you earlier. Again, my name is Brian Dang. You can find me at Mr. Dang, Mr. Dang on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. And I appreciate that you came out today to listen to this very important session. Enjoy the rest of your Scottish Summit experience.